So what are tariffs and how do they work? Let's break it down with some help from economic advisory firm Oxford Economics. Tariffs are taxes that a government places on things that get imported from another country. They're typically calculated by percentage. Tariffs have several purposes. First, they help boost a government's income. Second, they can be used to pressure companies and manufacturers to make things here rather than bringing them in from somewhere else. Tariffs can also be used as leverage against a foreign government. So who pays tariffs? Ultimately, it's the consumer. Since tariffs impose taxes on items that come into a country, prices on those items rise, and that cost trickles down to those who are buying the items. Eventually, this could force consumers to turn to products that are produced domestically because they're cheaper.
In 2018, President Donald Trump started trade fights that changed how countries do business. He added taxes on solar panels and washing machines to protect U.S. companies. Then he taxed steel and aluminum, saying it was for national security. He also went after China for unfair tech and trade practices. Next, he added taxes on cars for the same national security reason. He made trade threats to stop illegal immigration from Mexico. And he tried to protect the United States computer chip industry. These actions caused other countries to fight back.
President Trump's tariffs are one of the most harmful and unnecessary mistakes of the modern era. Almost everything Donald Trump has said about the history, economics, and technicalities of trade is delusional. Here's why. The president says his reciprocal tariffs are justified by other countries' barriers to America's goods. Currently, America imports more goods than it exports overall, and especially from countries such as China and Vietnam. To counteract this, he is setting tariffs to try to balance trade with every country. The effect of these tariffs on America's economy will be to increase the price of almost everything it imports, from food to phones, leading to higher inflation this year. In the long run, less trade means the economy will become less specialized, and it will have to duplicate things that are currently done overseas. This will hit productivity, and there will be less competitive pressure from imports to, say, make better and cheaper cars. The result will be that Americans take a hit to their real incomes and have less choice.
As Democrats make the allegations that some people inside the president's circle may have had a heads up this tariff walkback was coming and profited off it.
President Trump just truthed out, saying, quote, "I have authorized a 90-day pause." The president here announcing a 90-day pause on tariffs, though it's not clear specifically which countries this pause is going to apply to.
It all begs the question, why, when they announced the reciprocal tariffs, didn't the president say they take effect in 90 days? You all have 90 days to negotiate. Why did it have to be done this way?
Trade plan, as you all know, the president just put out a statement announcing an additional tariff on China. The tariff on China will now go up to 125% because China imprudently decided to retaliate against the United States. And as I said at the podium yesterday, when you punch at the United States of America, President Trump is going to punch back harder. In the meantime, there will be a 90-day pause on the reciprocal tariffs as these negotiations are ongoing, and the tariff level will be brought down to a universal 10% tariff.
This right here is guy at the bodega added $1 to the sandwich, so it went up from $8.50 to $9.50 yesterday.
Everything goes up but the pay.
President Trump has imposed tariffs, essentially taxes, on goods coming from Canada, Mexico, and China this week.
Everybody tries to be as happy as they can be, I guess, but pockets are hungry.
The president blasting China for retaliating instead of negotiating.
At this point, China's government has made it clear it's not interested in negotiation, saying they have both the will and abundant means to fight a trade war with the U.S.
Currently, American businesses sell just $143 billion worth of goods to China, while China sells $438 billion of products to the U.S., a record $295 billion trade deficit. Meanwhile, the president's move came after prominent business leaders, including J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon, warned the tariff turmoil could spark a recession.
I am going to defer to my economists at this point, but I think probably that's a likely outcome.
Democrats blasted the president's sudden shifts.
This chaos seems to be just a game for Donald Trump, but it is really real, very real, for people's lives, people's livelihoods.
So that was reason number one, the bond market sell-off that threatened the financial stability of the U.S. government. Reason number two, Trump was losing political capital. While markets were sending signals, Trump's phone lines were melting. CEOs were frantically dialing the White House. Republicans were seeking clarity. Constituents were asking for answers, and all of them had the same warning. Their patience had limits. Which brings us to reason number 3, negotiations. Ironically, it was the success of the tariff threat that gave Trump an off-ramp. The tariffs jolted countries into picking up the phone. They all wanted to talk to Trump. In true art of the deal fashion, that's the whole point. Make a big move, rattle the room, then wait for them to come to you. This tells you all you need to know about Donald Trump. He's a man of gut decisions, calibrated more by cable news than cabinet meetings. Policy is often reactive, not proactive. Negotiation is a performance, not a process. One week, the world braces for a trade war. The next, it's a pause and a negotiation bonanza. So what happens next?
Democrats have accused Donald Trump of possibly manipulating the stock market by announcing a 90-day pause on tariffs. But thankfully, we can all agree the people in Trump's inner circle have too much integrity for that.
What you have assembled in your vision is a turning point and an inflection point in American history. And so just being a part of that is the greatest honor. So thank you for that.
When your staff goes that over the top with praise, that's how you know you up. One man should not be able to dictate financial markets and single-handedly cause trillions of dollars to be lost or gained, but that is exactly what happened on Wednesday. Trump seemed very pleased on Wednesday with the rally he caused by single-handedly tanking the markets and then reversing himself.
We were up like close to 3,000 points. Nobody's ever seen a day like that. I think that's a record, isn't it, fellas?
Definitely. Because you tanked it. You set a house on fire, then you called the fire department, and now you want credit for saving the house from the fire you started.
James Matthews, who is at the White House. And James, on the one hand, with China, it is a real fight between those two countries now, the biggest two economies in the world.
Yeah, back down would be one interpretation, Mark. I suppose what he is looking for is some degree of coherence in the strategy moving forward. And looking at these markets, as you've just been describing, perhaps they are taking heart from that, a degree of certainty, signs of a strategy that they can trust moving forward. They think this is a positive move. And that has to help Donald Trump in a situation where increasingly the drumbeat has been getting louder, suggestions that this was a president who didn't know where he was taking this strategy. Scott Bessent, in that interview, he made the point that President Xi and Donald Trump were big friends. You know, there was an olive branch of sorts. That friendship is going to do some heavy lifting, isn't it? It's going to have to get through this trade war, a trade war that Donald Trump will feel that he has to win for all sorts of reasons, both economic and, of course, politically.
In a post to his Truth Social platform, the president said, quote, "At some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realize that the days of ripping off the USA and other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable." He went on to say, quote, "I have authorized a 90-day pause and a substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period of 10%, also effective immediately." Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent discussed the decision.
Every country in the world who wants to come and negotiate, we are willing to hear you. We're going to go down to a 10% baseline tariff for them, and China will be raised to 125 due to their insistence on escalation.
Notably, though, and this is what I don't think the markets have heard yet, he was asked later, what about those sectoral tariffs on things like pharmaceuticals or certain other goods? And the secretary said those remain in place. So really the only thing that's happening is everyone is facing a 10% reciprocal tariff except China, who's facing a 125% total tariff now. It is true that the secretary has heard from and met with Japanese, Vietnamese officials, expected to meet or be in close touch again with South Korean and Indian authorities as well. And notice the geography there, all of them next door neighbors to China. I asked him, is this about the rest of the world versus China? And what he said was, in essence, Well, let's play it then. Second, given then that you have the rest of the world essentially calling it, it's not China, is this now just all about China?
Well, it's about bad actors, and what we will see is some of the very early countries are China's neighbors. That we're going to see. I'm seeing Vietnam today. Japan's at the front of the queue. South Korea, India. So we will see. And as I've repeatedly said, and President Trump has been saying it for years, China is the most imbalanced economy in the history of the modern world, and they are the biggest source of the U.S. trade problems. And indeed, they are problems for the rest of the world.
So that gives you an early sense of where this administration is on this. They reiterated, Lindsay, that this was the president's decision alone, and yet we know that the Treasury Secretary, the Commerce Secretary were among those in the Oval Office with him as he made this decision. What we still don't know, what we want to know for certain, 10% for everyone but China, okay. Which sectoral tariffs remain? Who's on the call sheet? They still have not told us of those 75 countries who's called and who hasn't.
But there's a lot of relief, and you're seeing that in companies like NVIDIA, like Apple, and NVIDIA particular, right? I mean, you're getting all your chips from Taiwan. If that tariff goes from over 30% down to 10%, that right there, investors are excited about that. But I quoted that one investor that said, fool me once, because I think we've just seen this go back and forth so many times that there's a lot of excitement today in the markets, but everyone knows, based on how this has played out over the past couple of months, that this could be rolled back in 90 days.
And again, we have this strange symbiotic relationship with China where we need them, they need us, but they are also a very strategic competitor. A lot of American goods, a lot of American consumers rather, buy goods from China. And that impact from these tariffs is going to be immediate.
Curious on how this came together. You saw Caroline Leavitt and Scott Bessent tell reporters that this was President Trump's plan the entire time. They really downplayed whether the stock market, what happened with the bond market, if that impacted this decision.
During a hearing with Trump's trade representative, Jamieson Greer, he testified before the House Ways and Means Committee exactly about this issue of tariffs. And he was quite defiant, especially in pushing back against the very intense grilling from Democrats on this panel about Trump's trade policy, saying that the idea behind it is to now center Main Street over Wall Street, seemingly mocking the amount of attention and concern that lawmakers had about stocks and the volatility of the stock market. There were 7 Senate Republicans who signed on to a resolution that essentially rebuked the president's tariffs and hoped to bring the power back to Congress when it comes to levying these tariffs.
Kelly, I want to go back to you on a point that Javier David made, and that was in terms of the bond market sort of bullying the administration. Can you elaborate on that?
So basically what this means is investors, people buy into the bond market, they buy the government's debt, and that's considered a safe haven because everyone thinks if you buy into it, right, well, the dollar is strong, the economy is strong. You are buying into the idea that the government is not going to default on its debt. You are essentially loaning money to the government when you buy into the bond market. You buy their debt. We just had a couple of auctions where the government tries to sell off treasuries, sell off its debt, and there wasn't a lot of interest. It was much lower than expected. And what that tells you is investors are looking at what was going on with the economy, the possibility for higher inflation, and they didn't find that safe haven as attractive as they have before. That's when you start to worry.
Last year, China made $1 trillion off trade with the United States. That's not right. And now I've reversed it. It's for a short period of time, but we made $2 billion. We're making now $2 billion a day. So just be cool. It's going to work out. It's going to work out. And it's working out. I can tell you, working out maybe faster than I thought. I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy.
So Donald Trump was not really worried about the markets collapsing, but the bond sell-off, that was a different story altogether. If it kept going, his entire agenda could have become financially untenable. The success of the tariff threat that gave Trump an off-ramp. In Trumpian logic, that looks like a victory. So for him, this is not a pause. This is a tactical recalibration.
China is fully prepared to fight to the very end because the world is big enough that the United States is not the totality of the market in the world. So if the United States wants to go in that direction of completely shutting itself out of the China market, be my guest.
Yeah, and China will lose the U.S. market, which, as I've said, is 15%.
We don't care. We don't care. China has been here for 5,000 years. Most of the time, there was no United States, and we survived. And if the United States wants to bully China, we will deal with the situation without the United States. And we expect to survive for another 5,000 years. Show respect to the Chinese people and don't try to impose your prejudice and biased view about China or about the rest of the world.